2025 was a success. Subjective, I guess. My Camino guide is nearly a year old now. I've been running an AI agent in production for over a year. I've learned a lot. Traffic has been slow, but steadily growing on both the website and the agent. I can't complain. Obviously, I'd like it to go a little bit faster. But website traffic has started to grow up, primarily driven by additional content and services that I created. Blogs, daily news, both of which have automated everything. I got approval for Booking.com affiliate programs, which means technically I can generate revenue. We're not quite there yet, though. The agent still runs on Heroku, and the primary interface is WhatsApp. From day one, the decision to primarily focus on WhatsApp as an interface has caused me a lot of issues and problems. There's different timeout issues that I've had to deal with, not all markdown and formatting supported. In general, I don't think it was a good decision. Over Christmas, I took some time to rethink everything. And I went back and I rewrote everything using Claude Code. And I've got to say, it's a game changer. So much has changed in AI since I started all this process and my learnings. Claude Code just lets me bring all these things to life. So now the new website has a nice, stylish, flat experience. Data is being pulled directly from the database. But subtly, everything drives towards the chat. Now, one of the really big subtle changes here is instead of a typical website where I'll click on a button, it will take me to another page, everything is actually a prompt here. So for instance, if I click on view all routes, what it's going to do is actually inject a prompt into the agent. So the agent is going to make sense of the data that is given to you and return it in a way that makes sense for you that you want to use. So in this instance, the prompt is, what routes can I help you with? It will return all the information out. Now I can do the same thing with anything on the page. If I go to just start planning for free, I might want to create my itinerary. Again, it's a prompt that gets injected. This is a very different change from what I was used to building, and I came from SaaS applications where it's all about building a nice interface on top of data so humans can make sense of it. In an agentic world, you don't need that anymore. SaaS is dead. This is the way that everything is going to work. And then when I can start asking questions about things, I might say, I want to walk the Camino Francis starting on April 1st. I have 25 days to walk. Again, I'm not entering information into fields on a website to get this back. I'm asking a prompt. No, I want to walk. Once I've provided that clarity, again, it's a conversation. It's not an interface. And the data that comes back gets returned to me in a format that is useful for humans. It's a very different way of thinking about it, but it's subtle. I'm going to use the standard variants. The goal really was to create a conversation with an agent, not feel like I'm interacting with a website. Now, LLMs do that fantastically for you because they make sense of that data in an abstract form that we as humans are used to. But what I wanted to be able to do is return all that information and make sense of it in a way that makes sense for humans. So you can see it's already gone and created the itinerary, but it's done it in a way that I can follow through. If I want to say, let's say I completed the first and second routes, I can now mark them as completed. Or I want to see the details of day 4. It goes and adds a prompt and injects it back inside there. So the prompt and the agent is my interface. Now in the previous version, it was a collection of individual Python scripts, README files that I had to follow to understand how to start up and run my application and my agent. To be honest, it was a bit of a nightmare to manage and maintain. It was just difficult to make changes. With Claude Code, I was able to move everything into a single project and manage it, maintain any area that I saw that I could remove a repetitive task and automate it. I leveraged / commands. So you'll see here, I have a dozen of slash commands, anything from adding admin users, adding routes or customers, summarizing data, creating itineraries, and then using things like the daily news and daily videos that you saw in season 1. These are now slash commands that are also cron jobs running inside the cloud on Vercel when I deploy it. So everything I can do, I can manage very simply here. Most importantly, I can even start and stop my agent so I can test it. And if you've used Claude Code at all, you know everything is based around the command and a markdown file for instructions. So it has everything that I need here that I can very, very simply run it with a single slash command. Now, I started off looking at just slash commands as ways to automate these small and individual processes. But what I wanted to do was go a little bit deeper. And to do that, I took advantage of sub-agents. Now, I now have sub-agents for each members of my team, whether it's the back-end developer or maybe a content writer that is working on blog or website content to make sure it has a consistent voice that goes with brand, as well as a front-end mobile dev, QA testers, and in particular, I added a performance engineer. One of the big areas that was always problematic in V1 was the performance of the queries going through OpenAI and Supabase and often timing out inside WhatsApp. There was a bunch of things that resulted in that, but now I have a performance engineer that always comes in and reviews any database changes whenever it is needed. And the way that it reviews it is, again, automated via Claude Code using hooks. So hooks are an amazing way that I can take any area that anytime I make a change. So for instance, let's say I load new embeddings or I want to make a database change. I want to make sure that that performance engineer is aware of it. So the Claude Code hook will actually stay and monitor for any areas that have changed those database areas and run its performance tests for me. It'll optimize where it can. It'll suggest changes as needed. And then anytime that I get ready to push to production, I have a build validator here that listens for git push commands, goes through and runs a bunch of the validation tests, whether it's performance or playwright for the front end and API tests for the back end. I put all of these things together and start to automate anything and everything that I can. So at first I started small. What are those manual tasks that are repetitive and I want to use again and automate? I'll use slash commands for that. But as I build things bigger, Claude Code hooks helps me manage the entire process of my application development. It's really been a game changer in the way that it works. And anytime that I run QA, I always make sure it outputs the result so I can go in and have a look and see the results of all the tests and what's working and what's changing. This is a really good practice to get into creating a QA summary. So I can go back and have a look and say, okay, there are some database changes. These certain things need to be fixed. And here is some information and description on what needs to be fixed. I then use that as input for the next task and the prompt for Claude to have context on what it needs to work on. So the idea of working with your agent is always providing insight and context. Even if it's outside of the context window, I just pass in this QA report to my next Claude Code session, and it picks up exactly where I needed to go. In season 2, I'm going to dive into all the aspects of what it took to build this application inside Claude Code and what I've learned from building a production AI agent for the last year. Make sure you follow along, and I'll see you on the next one.